The moment the breathing stopped, the work began. Not mourning, not burial, preservation. A stranger would arrive, carrying buckets of plaster and oil. The curtains would be drawn shut, candles lit low against the walls, and somewhere inside the silence of the room, the dead would be prepared one final time, not for a coffin, but for a cast, a death mask. An exact imprint of the face moments after death. The Victorians didn't invent death masks. Ancient civilization had created them for centuries. Kings, philosophers, poets, and emperors had all been immortalized in plaster long before the Victorian era ever existed. But the Victorians transformed the practice into something darker, more intimate, almost obsessive. Because the 19th century was an age consumed by death. Children died young. Disease swept through crowded cities. Tuberculosis lingered in homes for years. Entire families vanished within a single winter. Death was not hidden away from society the way it often is now. It lived beside people, sat beside them at dinner, waited upstairs behind closed doors. And when someone died, many families could not bear to let the face disappear. So they preserved it. A thin layer of grease would first be applied across the skin to keep the plaster from sticking. The eyes were carefully closed, the mouth adjusted into a peaceful expression, if possible. Then the wet plaster was poured directly over the face of the corpse. Now imagine that for a moment. Cold plaster slowly hardening over the features of the dead. Every wrinkle, every eyelash, every line around the mouth, captured forever. When the mold dried, it was removed carefully, leaving behind a perfect negative impression of the person's face. From that mold, a cast could then be made, a pale replica, so accurate it often looked as though the dead were only sleeping. Some families displayed these masks openly in their homes. Others kept them hidden in velvet-lined boxes like sacred relics. And over time, many of the masks became deeply unsettling to look at. Not because they were grotesque, but because they felt too real. The expression remained frozen exactly as death had left it. Some appeared peaceful, others looked exhausted, and a few looked terrifying. And that is where the fascination began to shift into something stranger, because Victorians believed objects could hold memory. To the Victorian mind, grief was not something to escape quickly. It was something to preserve, something to sit beside, something to keep close, even after death itself had arrived. And perhaps that is why death masks became so important, not merely as photographs, but as impressions taken directly from the dead themselves. The exact contours of a face preserved long after the voice had vanished. There is something deeply human about that, and something deeply unsettling, because a face is identity. It is the final thing we recognize when someone we love disappears. In an age when photographs were still rare and life itself was painfully fragile, a death mask offered something terrifyingly close to permanence. Not just memory, presence. Even now, some people report feeling uneasy standing near them in museums. Not because the masks are necessarily haunted, but because they create this strange illusion that the dead are still waiting just beneath the surface. Silent, paused, almost aware. And perhaps that discomfort comes from the realization the Victorians understood all too well. The dead do not vanish as quickly as we pretend they do. Sometimes they remain in photographs, sometimes in empty rooms, and sometimes they remain in the shape of a face pressed forever into plaster.